Hi everyone, welcome back to Mentor Monday. I'm Lisa Ireland. I'm an Australian author of contemporary fiction, and I'm here today to give you some tips on writing fantastic dialogue for your characters in your story. So last week, if you joined us last week, we talked a little bit about character voice, about how you can differentiate between your characters, how you can make each character sound different. And I'm just going to revisit the end of that today, and then jump on into writing sparkling dialogue. So last week I told you to listen to conversations and to be a spy, to go listen to people in cafes, listen when your partner's talking to you, and maybe even with people's permission, of course, maybe even record some speech. Like it might be interesting if you are at a cafe with a friend and you record your conversation, as I said, with your friend's permission, so that you can play it back later and listen to exactly what people do say when they're having a conversation. So as we covered off last week, it's important to make sure that your characters have their own unique voice when they're talking, so that readers straight away should be able to know by the speech who it is, which character it is that is speaking. Now, there's lots of ways that you can do that. Some characters might speak quickly, and they may have short, sharp sentences. They might instead of like long, waffly sentences that might have lots of conjunctions and might go on and on and on like that one just did, they may be more inclined to speak briefly, and this is, use quite a lot of brevity, and this is often the case for male speakers. It can be any speaker, of course, but men do not tend to have the long, waffly sentences that I sometimes see them speaking in fiction. So vary your sentence length in dialogue. That's one way to make your characters sound different. Another way, and it has to be true to character, of course. We talked about this at length last week. Your characters drive their speech. It has to be, you wouldn't have a character who's a very dreamy, imaginative, creative type talking in short, sharp sentences. Those people would be more verbose, use more complex words, and take their time saying things and be maybe more thoughtful in their speech. So think about what your character is like and how they will speak. Will they speak quickly? Will they speak slowly? Will there be lots of pauses in their speech? Things you can do is, your character might stutter or stutter a bit, or speak haltingly, have lots of pauses in their speech. All of these devices are things that you can sprinkle through, but I give you a word of warning: don't over-labour the point. If you've given a character a stutter, or if they're someone who pauses a lot, don't do it in every sentence. Don't labour the point. Don't make it difficult for the reader to read. And while we're on that, another, which I'll cover off a little bit later, but that's the same for accents. If you are describing a particular accent, you might want to give the flavour of an accent rather than write every word phonetically how that person would speak. So even if it's your not necessarily a different language background, but it might even be a cultural thing, you might be trying to give a sense that of a person's education or their geographical location within a country, and so you might choose a particular type of accent or parochial way of speaking, but don't labour the point. So don't make every single word have the accent or be written phonetically. You would just sprinkle in a few words here and there and let the reader's imagination take them on. If you say, for instance, it's someone who you've painted a picture of a person who's maybe not particularly well educated, or has come from a particular area where they may drop their G's, for instance, at the end of a word. So go and plan, that type of thing. I speak like that sometimes. Don't do it for every ing word. Do it every now and then for impact, and your reader will get the idea. Okay, so we've talked a lot now about character voice, and I hope that's given you some ideas. So going along from the character voice and how to make each character sound a little bit different, I thought I would speak a little bit more about actual dialogue and why we have it in books. Like, what's your dialogue doing there? Why do we even need it? So dialogue serves lots of purposes. It firstly gives us variety. So from exposition, it breaks the story up for the reader, gives them something a little bit different for their eye to scan. And the great thing about dialogue is that it adds a bit of white space because of the way we punctuate dialogue. That white space, I know it sounds crazy, but that white space on the page is actually relief for the reader's eye, and it helps to draw them into the story when there's a little bit of visual relief from heavy exposition. So that's one thing that dialogue does. Another thing that dialogue does is it gives us the point of view from non-point of view characters. We can find out not everything about non-point of view characters, but we can find out a little bit about how they're thinking or what's going on in their world from conversations they have with our point of view characters. So it's giving the reader more perspective on the story. You can actually impart information to the reader through your dialogue, and it is giving your character a voice, giving your characters voice. It's giving them real, true characterization. We get to know the characters, not just through their thoughts, but through what they actually say. So, and we can have a lot of fun with dialogue, because particularly with point of view characters, because if we've been inside the character's head and we know what they're thinking, but yet their dialogue doesn't reflect that, that's an interesting take for the reader, and the reader can see that things are, she's saying that, but that's not actually true. Where is this going? So it can add interest and suspense. So your dialogue has to work hard. Dialogue is not there just to fill the pages. Every sentence of dialogue, like every sentence in your book, should be moving the story forward. It should be telling us something about the characters. It should be telling us something about the setting, or moving the plot forward, preferably all three. You have to make your dialogue work hard. So we want it to move the story forward. We want it to give the reader information, but we have to be careful that we do this in a way that it seems natural and believable that characters would speak this way. One of the things that I find that with new writers is this is it's often their weakest point, because people write speech that they give the characters voices and speech that they so that they can move the plot forward, but we have characters saying things that are completely unbelievable for that character. We have men making these great long speeches, which is unlikely, and we have characters giving information about backstory to other characters who might already know the backstory, and it's purely done for the reader's benefit, which is clunky and boring to read. So I'm going to give you a few don'ts now. Don't do this in your dialogue, and I'm going to start with that very thing, backstory. If you have got two characters talking, characters will not talk about stuff that they already know. Like, for instance, if I ran into my cousin Michelle in the street in the town where I live, I wouldn't say, "Oh, hello, Michelle, my cousin. How are you? I remember that time when we met at your mother's house, my aunt." Like, do you see what I'm doing? Oh, this is a very clumsy example, but do you see what I'm doing? I don't give the information. Like, if I saw my cousin Michelle, I would say, "Hey, how you doing? Hey, we've got time for a coffee. Should we, go to the bakery and get a cuppa?" Or I wouldn't. Or, "How's your dad? Your dad's not been well lately. How's your dad? I heard that he hasn't been well." I wouldn't say, "So I believe your father has been suffering from, I don't know, arthritis." I don't know. What I'm saying is, both Michelle and I know that her dad's been unwell. So the conversation, I'd have to impart the knowledge to the reader through the conversation. If that conversation was happening to move the plot forward, I would have to make sure that whatever direction the conversation went in, that I wasn't dropping in backstory that my cousin would already know. So, you have to be really nuanced and careful about the way you deliver information. You can deliver that through character thought, perhaps, and you can definitely deliver it in dialogue. You just have to be careful about the way you do it. So no obvious dropping in of backstory. Another big don't is the overuse of character names. If I ran into my cousin Michelle in the main street of Ocean Grove, I would say, "Hi, Mish, how you going?" I wouldn't then pepper each sentence with, "Well, Michelle, as you know, I live around the corner from here, and it is a very difficult walk into town, Michelle." Like, she knows her name. I know her name. I'm probably not going to use her name again in that conversation. Occasionally you might, like, for emphasis on something. If I'm arguing with my husband, I might use his name, or my kids. If I want my kids to do something, I might say in exasperation, "Oh, Alex," or I might say, "Well, David," to my husband, if I'm annoyed with him and I'm trying to move him to do something or press a point home. But I wouldn't use his name 6 times in the same conversation. So that's something to check your dialogue for. Are you overusing the characters' names? And all the things that we've talked about at the beginning and also last week about listening to what people really truly say. I can't stress that enough. People do speak in fragments, but of course you want your reader to, you can clean it up a little bit because you want your reader to understand what you are saying, what the characters are saying. So don't make it so true to life that the conversation is unintelligible. But it is okay to have fragments of speech. It's okay for your characters to get interrupted mid-speech, for them to trail off as they think about something else. Don't have all your speech being perfect, because human speech is not perfect. Now I want to talk a little bit about dialogue tags. And I'm going to read you a little section in a moment from The Secret Life of Shirley Sullivan, just from the beginning, where there is some speech, and I'm going to talk about the dialogue tags. I can't stress this enough. Don't go in for your fancy dialogue tags. I mentioned this last week, and I'm going to say it again because it's really important. No hissed, huffed, spat, whispered, murmured, gasped, definitely no gasped. Those words draw your reader out of the story. They actually make the reader work harder. So if you say said is like it's almost like an invisible word. If you I don't know if any of you know anything about landscaping, but lots of times landscapers will suggest using black for like a fence or pool fencing, that type of thing, or for garden stakes, that sort of thing. Often, and I'm not a fan of like dark colours outside. I remember talking to my landscaper about this one time, and I said, you know what, a black pool fence? No, I'm thinking, we'll match the house. And he said, your eye, in landscapes, your eye does not see black. It will just blend, the black will blend into the landscape, and your eye won't see it, and it will just look like part of the garden. And he was right. That's true. So, I'm not a landscaper, so I took his advice. But I am a writer, and I can advise you that SED's like, if in the writing landscape, SED is like black. It disappears. The eye just skims over it, and readers are not bothered by it. They just read over it, and it doesn't pull them out. But if you start writing descriptive speech tags, that makes the reader work harder. They're then going, oh, gasped, okay, and it takes away from the flow of the dialogue. One or two every now and then, if you really must, is probably okay. But if every single one of your speech tags is gasped, whispered, huffed, hissed, whatever, go back, take them out, replace them with said. Or asked. Asked is fine too. Just your generic said and asked, that's all you need. Now, do you need a speech tag for every piece of dialogue? No, you absolutely do not. If there's only two people speaking and the characters have really strong, distinct voices, there's probably going to be a lot of that dialogue that doesn't need a tag at all. Once you get into the conversation, you can just write the speech as is without tags. Particularly, that works particularly well if it's an argument or fast-paced speech where you're trying to increase the pace of the story through your dialogue. The less tags, the better. So, conversely, if the dialogue is taking place in a part where you want to slow the story, you might place some internal character thoughts between the speech. So you might have me saying something. So what have you got there, Fred? And thinking to myself, that looks like Fred shouldn't have that piece of that very big box of chocolates. I wonder if Fred's stolen that from the shop. So I can be thinking stuff. I mean, that's so clunky. Don't write that. But I can be thinking stuff, and that can break up the dialogue, but that will slow the pace down. So so I probably wouldn't do that in the middle of an argument. I might do it if I'm trying to get some information out of another character. I might have some internal thoughts going on in the character's head while the conversation is going on. So you can use said, use asked, not use any tags at all. Break up the speech with some internal thoughts if you want to, or some action, if you want to slow down the pace, if you want to quicken the pace, just dialogue, no tags, bang, 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 or minimal tags. And that brings me to action tags. So, and I'll demonstrate those when I read, but action tags are the character does something and then there's no need to say who's speaking. So, come here. Lisa looked at Sharon across the room. Come here. I don't need to say she said, because you've already said that I've looked at Sharon across the room. Anyway, I'll demonstrate that by reading a little section. Action tags are great, but don't overuse those either. So, like, some people really get excited about action tags because it gets rid of the clunky he said, she said, he glared, whatever. And they can be great, but not all speech needs a tag. So don't overuse action tags, but action tags can work really well for you if you use them moderately. Okay, so I'm going to read you just a little bit of dialogue, and this is from Shirley is in the nursing home talking to her husband Frank, and this is a quite it's quite a contemplative scene. It's quite gentle, and it's not an action scene. there's plenty of stuff going on in between the pieces of dialogue. It's not where they're arguing. I could find a confrontation scene between Shirley and her daughter Fiona later on, and you would see that there's not much, there's not many tags in between. Okay, so here we go. I point to the exposed skin of his legs. I hope you have sunscreen on. Easy to get burned in beautiful weather like this. He screws up his nose. This is an action tag. He screws up his nose. Pfft, sunscreen. Can't stand the stuff. Makes the sand stick to your skin. He smiles indulgently. More action. You sound like my wife. She's always trying to get me to put on sun cream when I'm on patrol. She's fair-skinned, you see. Only has to look at the sun and she gets burned, but not me. My skin's as tough as old boots. Even if I go a bit pink at first, I end up tanned. My Shirley can't seem to understand that. Okay, so now there's a bit of internal stuff from Shirley, because like I said, this is a slow, gentle scene. I bite my tongue and refrain from talking about skin cancer. He's had half a dozen basal cell carcinomas cut out over the past decade. But of course the Frank sitting next to me doesn't know that. He's back in his youth. Instead, I say, see, this is in the present tense, so not said. If I was in the past tense, I would have said, but I say. Instead, I say, so you like the beach then? He nods. Action tag. It's my second home. I'm a lifesaver, you know, at Bankura. Lovely little beach. Best spot in the world, if you ask me. He closes his eyes for a moment, and when he opens them again, they're brighter, as though he has just had a wonderful idea. So all of that's an action tag. Look, you couldn't do me a favour, could you? You couldn't give a bloke a lift. I need to get back home to Shirl. She's probably worried sick by now. I got lost somehow and ended up in this place. I keep telling them that I need to get home, but no one's listening. I'm listening. So that's Shirley there saying, I'm listening. There's no tag at all, because there's only the two of them in the conversation. We don't need a tag. He breaks into a heartwarming smile. Action tag. So you'll take me home? I want to take him in my arms and promise him everything will be all right. But today I'm a stranger to him and I don't want to cause him further distress by crossing any boundaries. The staff tell me when he's like this, it's best to play as much as possible. I can't today, I say carefully. I don't have my car. His face falls momentarily before he regains his composure. Another action tag. Tomorrow then? It pains me to hear the desperation in his voice. Yes, love, I say or said. And it's a blessed relief that this time I don't have to lie. Tomorrow. No tag at all. Okay, so hopefully that little bit has shown you how you can mix it up. No tags, some action tags, sometimes using, I used say, but if it was in past tense, which a lot of books are, you would use said. Just to make the dialogue flow between the characters, to make it interesting for the reader and not repetitive, and to provide a bit of white space relief from the exposition, and to provide the reader with information that they critically need about to move the story along for the plot. Okay, so your dialogue has to work hard. There shouldn't be too many pass the salts, unless it's a metaphor for something else in your dialogue. Make your dialogue work for you. Make it work hard. I think that's all I've got to say for today. I hope that's been helpful to you. I'll be back next week with another Mentor Monday, and it won't be next week, then it'll be the following week where I have a Path to Publication Day, which is my next one. We are talking to Kanina May, who's a lovely debut Australian author. Well, she's been a debut author and she's just about to release her second book, so that will be really great. Okay, so as always, if you've enjoyed this, you can subscribe and then you'll be notified when a new video drops. Have a great writing week, everyone, and I'll see you next time. Bye.